All right. Well, we are back, and we're talking about strategic planning. So, at this point, I'm going to talk a little bit more about just what I do, just to give a little bit of context for the material. So, I'm the Assistant Vice President of Strategic Planning at CHOP, and CHOP has over 20,000 employees, and we have 40, 50 plus divisions. I'm probably getting that number wrong. We have 60 physical locations across the states of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. We care for patients all over the world, and all of those things lead to a very, very complex system. On top of that, we have three main entities that make up Children's Hospital as a whole. So we have the hospital, which incorporates all of the physical footprint. We have the physician practices, so the physician groups, some of which are employed by CHOP, some of which are not employed by CHOP, and they have their own finance departments. They get paid by the University of Pennsylvania. They're a distinct entity within broader CHOP. And then we have the Research Institute. When I first came to CHOP 7 years ago, one of the first things my boss told me, who was the chief strategy officer at the time, he said, "Brendan, you can go to every division chief within this organization, and they'll give you a different answer as to what CHOP's mission is. One division chief will tell you we're all about research. If it's not research, we shouldn't be doing it. Another division chief might tell you we're here to care for the most vulnerable patients within our community. And another division chief might say, I don't know, we're here to make a lot of money. I don't know, right? Everyone has their own reason to be here. And so when you have a large organization, every 20,000 plus people, they all have their own why. They all have their own reason for coming here. They all have their own view as to what we should be doing as an organization. And they're all valid views. But that is not a sustainable way to run an organization. So successful organizations have a strategy. They have a why are we all here? What is the thing we are all working toward as a unit? There's a really great example that I think illustrates this well. So does everyone know what NASA is? It's the United States Space Agency. And clearly NASA had not just a really good strategic plan, but they communicated that plan really, really, really well to everyone in NASA. And the evidence for this is one day, and I don't know who it was, but somebody who was not in NASA was walking the floor of one of the buildings. And he started talking with the janitor, the person that cleans the floors. And he said, "Why are you here?" And the janitor said, "To put a man on the moon." The janitor didn't say to clean floors. He said, "I'm here to put a man on the moon." Now that is an organization that clearly communicated why we're all here. And the janitor understood his role, the role he was playing to put a man on the moon. I think that's a really powerful story. And if you can get that in your organization, then I think they've done a pretty good job of strategic planning and communicating and motivating the mission and the vision. The last thing I want to say before we get into the material is what we're going to talk about today, it doesn't have to be in the context of your hospital or a big organization. You can have a strategic plan for yourself. You can have a strategic plan for your own professional development. You have your own goals, right? You have your own, why am I here? Why do I get up every morning? And if you're not where you want to be, you can develop a strategic plan for yourself. So there's really a lot here that I think really runs the spectrum from a team of one, which is you, all the way to a team of 20,000 plus people. So I bring that up too, is some of the content here, you might feel like, oh, this is, it's not going to be relevant to me because I don't run a 20,000 person organization. It is relevant because you are your own CEO, right? So there's going to be some good stuff here. So we're going to talk about why strategic planning, why is it important? I already started to go there a little bit. What is a strategic plan? What are some of the fundamental steps in strategic planning? We're going to talk about scenario planning as a component of strategic planning. And then we're going to take a break. So, first I want to hear from you all. Have any of you ever participated in a strategic planning process, thought strategically, had any exposure to strategic planning? And if yes, what worked well and maybe what didn't work well, or just any other general observations you all have about strategic planning? I would just love to hear, any general thoughts or feelings that you have right now. I'm scared to talk about this. I don't know. Yeah.
I remember when they asked me to be the new chief of the department. They asked me in advance a strategic planning for the development of the department. But they asked me, we need a strategic plan, and then how?
Nothing.
How?
Yeah.
I don't have any formal education on administration or in leadership, etc. So I had to ask for help with department of planning at the hospital, and they give me some kind of orientation. And then maybe I knew what I wanted to do, but to put that on a paper with objectives, times for evaluation, the strategies to accomplish that, it was really hard. And I thought at the time there was a lot of paperwork because I was thinking maybe, but I know what I want to do. Yes, but to know what I want to do is not enough. You need a strategic planning to be accomplished objective by objective and evaluating if you are doing well or not.
Yeah.
But that is difficult. To put in the paper, for me, was difficult.
Were there other difficult elements to it? Anything else you found particularly difficult?
Yes, to try to connect what I was thinking with the structure inside the hospital.
Yeah.
And how, because for example, I wanted to do a screening for Down syndrome, for example. But I need to have money to get the test that I needed and how I'm going to get that. And it was like I had good intentions, but I had to face the reality that we have a lot of deficiencies.
Yeah. Which is why we talked about systems thinking first.
Yes.
Because you can't do a strategic planning in your department and achieve all of your goals without bringing more people into that work and discussion. Was it easy to say, okay, I know the direction I want my team to go to, or this screening clinic for Downs, I know where I want to take it. Was that enough to know and put it on paper? No. Right.
That there are a lot of more process involved in
Yeah.
what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
That is not only my desire or that I have the clarity for that I want, that I have to do all the operative processes to get that.
Yeah.
It's not easy. One thing, but I wanted to do like 10 different things, so it was more complex.
Yep. One more person talk about their general experience with strategic planning. Yep.
So we are developing the short 3-year action plan and long-term 7-year plan. So not only to put on the paper, then the main process is to implement the goals and incorporate all the departments. And the key point is then to monitor how things are done and if we are all in line. And when COVID happened, all our plans just crashed. And then we had to adjust to that and do new version of COVID, the pandemic plan, how to act in that case.
Yep.
Isn't it that we're generally often strategic plan, not even knowing that we are strategic planning? I mean, subconsciously, because we plan to like get a degree in something, you plan to become a professor, you plan to finish your specialty training,
Uh-huh.
and you plan to achieve certain goals in your life, and you have a timeline of it, and you consider potential things that may go wrong because you're like planning to like invest some money, you're planning to get a house in Mallorca or whatever, and that is components of strategic planning because you're eventually thinking what can go wrong during the process and what will be the alternatives, what are the risks, and you analyze your potential opportunities and threats, and these are core components of strategic planning, and you sometimes do it not even knowing that you're strategic planning.
Oh yeah. I mean, how many times and maybe you say this about yourself, man, that person's really a strategic thinker. Like, they may have had no formal training in strategic planning, they just think strategically. They intuit that I have a vision, and I know there's ways to get there, and I know there's a lot of risk and obstacles involved, and I know how to mitigate those risks, and I know what I do and don't know. And a big part of strategic planning is really understanding what it is you can control, what can you not control, and then incorporate that into what you think is the best plan. And so that's why, and the title is Strategic Planning in Uncertain Times. Because if we didn't have uncertainty, you actually wouldn't really need strategic planning very much. Strategic planning is about navigating the unknown the best that you possibly can. So, here are two definitions of strategic planning at the top of the slide. The big font is like the most basic definition, and the one below is a little bit more detailed. So at the very core level, strategic planning defines the overall objective and a roadmap for an organization to achieve its mission. So again, going back to NASA, at the time they had one mission, get a person on the moon. So everything that people did was to get to that one mission. And you can see how difficult it is to strategically plan in an organization like Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, where you have a research institute, you have a hospital, you have the practices. They all, within themselves, might have a different mission, but what's that one core mission? So, going a little bit deeper, the purpose of strategic planning is to reaffirm or redefine the mission. So sometimes the mission no longer is the right mission. So you have to understand what's happening in your environment that would tell you that's no longer the right mission, we need to have a different mission. Or sometimes, frankly, you just have a new leader that comes in at the top and says, we have a new mission. That happens. That's not necessarily bad. There's reasons why it's not a good thing, not optimal, but sometimes it just is. But then there's still a lot of work to organize to say, what strategic objectives do we need to identify and pursue to achieve the new mission? And when you think about defining those concrete objectives, you really want to think about what are the strengths of our organization, what are the opportunities, what are the weaknesses, what are the threats in our environment, so that we can really identify those strategic objectives that are going to be most impactful. And then really, because our world is uncertain, we need to understand what are all the risks, what are all the ways that this strategy could go awry, could go wrong, and then can we identify ways to mitigate or adapt or address the worst case scenarios. So I was having a conversation in between lecture 1 and lecture 2 today, and we were just talking about you develop a strategy, but all of these things could go wrong, right? I think in systems thinking, we were all talking about you can make a change in a system, but there are unintended consequences when you make that change. Well, I can tell you, as someone who's done the process, when you roll out a new strategy to an entire organization, what do you think the general, first reaction is from people? Resistance? Yep. Yep. Any other feelings or thoughts that people? Yes. Yep. Number one thing is, it won't work. Fear is right. The other big one is, this doesn't apply to me. You're telling me that the objective is to put a man on the moon? Well, I don't care about moon rocks. I got hired to, you know, I don't know. You can tell I'm not a scientist. You know, I got hired to just work on jet propulsion engines, but I never thought they were going to the moon. I don't care about going to the moon. Why do I care about going to the moon? So a key part of strategic planning, a key output, and again, similar to what I was saying earlier, a strategy can be in the same way that a strategy can be for yourself, or it can be for a large organization. Depending on what it's for, it can go to varying levels of depth. So the most fundamental part of a strategic plan, if it doesn't have anything else, it should have this. It should have key objectives, identified objectives that you are going to achieve, and understanding the why behind those objectives. Why do I even care about them? What's the goal and intended impact? Especially in a larger organization, objectives should not be too prescriptive. There should be a level of flexibility within those objectives, especially when you're thinking about a 20,000 person organization, where each department might have to figure out their own way or own solution to helping the organization achieve that objective. So ideally, objectives can be framed in a language in a way that empowers people lower down in the organization and gives them the flexibility to develop their own tactics, develop their own ways of achieving those core, say, 3 to 5 objectives for the organization. However, depending on like the depth of where the organization is on its maturation curve in a given area, a strategy could get really, really detailed, or it could stay very high level. So here's an example. If a tech company is developing a new 5-year strategy, it may have 5 objectives that are fairly specific as it relates to areas of technology, because they're very mature in that space, and that is where their knowledge is, that is where they have the most experience. And so they may have a very detailed, nuanced set of objectives that relate to technology. However, you may be a healthcare organization, and you're just realizing for the first time, or maybe it's not just a matter of realization, but it's just a matter of reality, that COVID's a great example of this. Oh wow, like people actually can and want to be seen via telemedicine. So because that's fairly new to healthcare, a healthcare organization is not going to have like a very detailed, in-depth set of tactics or levers or goals within one of their strategic objectives to maybe see more patients digitally. But maybe for now, because of where they are in their maturation, all they know is that's one of the objectives we need to achieve. Now, we need to see more patients digitally, but we may at the moment have no idea how the heck we're going to do that. But by setting that objective, then that is a plan by which all of the other plans, all of the other organizing within the organization will flow from. So, a couple more things about strategic planning. So I talked a little bit about this already. So what is it? It defines the overall direction of an organization. And like I just said with the hospital and digital example, it really is the roadmap from which all other operational plans should really flow from. It takes a long-term view. So at CHOP, we do strategic planning in 5-year increments. So it's not meant to necessarily solve tomorrow's problem, but it's really meant to solve the problems of 5 years from now, to make sure that your organization is achieving its mission and continues to be viable and sustainable. If you're not viable, you're not sustainable, you can't achieve your mission, right? And this is important. It never stops. Strategic plans are never perfect. And so it is not best practice to develop a strategic plan and then come back to it 5 years later and be like, hey, did that work? Was it the right plan? You should always be questioning it and testing it. So every year at CHOP, we do a scenario planning exercise with the executive suite, the CEO, the chief operating officer, the chief financial officer, physician-in-chief, and we say, these are all the assumptions, these are all the reasons why we developed this strategy last year. A year later, does the world still look like we said it was going to look like a year ago? What's changed? So, when do you guys think in recent memory we did a lot of scenario planning? A lot of pressure testing the strategy? When did the world really change? Pandemic? Like that, right? Literally, like that, our world looked totally different. And so once we were able, obviously you were all knee deep in it. It was like, for the first couple months, we're all scrambling, we're all just trying to keep the lights on. We're just trying to make sure that we can care for as many people as we can. But by summertime, 3 months in, it was still hectic, it was still nuts, but we had a new normal, and that was a really good time for us to take a step back and say, is our strategy still the right strategy? Because the world has changed a heck of a lot. And what is it not? Sorry. It's not supposed to solve every problem in the organization. If you try to solve every problem in the organization, you're not going to get anywhere. It's really about prioritization. What are like the 3 most important things for this organization to achieve its mission? It is not going to suggest detailed operational changes. So I may develop a strategy along with a lot of people, but I'm not then going to go to Scott in his department and say, Scott, this means you need to start doing X, Y, Z, right? No, it's up to Scott to think through how is his team best going to achieve the core objectives laid out in the strategy. And then, very related to that, it doesn't take the place of annual budget planning or operational planning, right? It's the roadmap, it's the vision. Do people remember Blockbuster? It's an American company, but anyone heard of Blockbuster? Anyone heard of Borders? So Borders was a bookstore. So a brick and mortar bookstore, and it sold books. And Blockbuster was a movie rental company. So you walk into the store, there's a million movies on the shelves, and you get a movie, and then you pay for it, you leave. Neither of those companies do not exist anymore. They're gone, they're bankrupt. Either they did not do strategic planning, or they were just, like, they got it wrong. They just straight up got it wrong. You can see here that everyone knows Netflix, right? Netflix, company Netflix, and then Amazon, right? You can see when Netflix and Amazon really started to take off is when both of those companies started to nosedive. There's a famous quote by the CEO of Blockbuster at the time in 2008. And he was asked about, so that's right here, 2008. He was asked about Netflix and whether his company was worried about Netflix. And he said, they're not even on our radar. We're really worried about Walmart. He or his company could not see the direction where the market was headed. If we're going to talk over the next hour or so how strategic planning, by using certain tools and tactics, can help you kind of forecast what the market could look like in the future, and then what you need to do to adapt. If the CEO of Blockbuster said, oh wow, what's Netflix doing? They're creating convenience for people. You don't have to actually go to the store. And they're actually able to provide a much larger selection because they have the universe at their disposal, not just the limitation of my 4 walls. That convenience and choice might be important to people. And part of strategic planning gives you the time and space to ask your customers or consumers, what do you want? Like what motivates you? And if they had done that, they may have gone digital the way Netflix did. So there's different levels of strategy or strategic work. And you can think about it in terms of there's immediate strategy work, there's medium term, and there's long term. So as I said earlier, a strategic plan is the long term, but there's strategic thinking and strategic work that you can do outside of the context of a strategic plan. So there is time-sensitive work or time-sensitive needs, of an organization that might require strategic thinking. One example of that is COVID. So COVID happens. We're in a million different directions. We have a finite amount of resources within our institution, and maybe the government's not helping us at all. So we're on our own. So of the million different things we could prioritize with our resources, what are going to be like the 5 to 10 top priorities where our discretionary funds should be going to help us get over the COVID pandemic? And that requires a level of strategic thinking. It requires understanding what is going on right now at the moment, where do we want to be at the end of this thing, right? And then what are the key objectives or priorities we should be using our money for to make sure we get over the hump. So that kind of thinking outside of today can be applied to near-term challenges. So strategic planning does